Good day, friends. This is my third video in the series that I am doing on Operation Sindoor. And in this one, I'll talk about the lessons of Sindoor. It is very clear to everybody that Sindoor provided a clear glimpse, an idea of what a war between India and Pakistan, God forbid if it happens, would look like. And it will be nowhere near the war that the two sides have fought in the past with the armies in the lead. What we are looking at is a war which will be high intensity, high tempo, and where both the sides will be required to close the kill chain at the earliest. Now, before I give the striking features of this war, a bit of a background need to be said. So let me start with what the Deputy Chief of the Indian Army, Lieutenant General Rahul Singh, had said when he spoke about lessons of Sindoor. He said that what India faced was one border, two adversaries. Border Pakistan, adversaries Pakistan and China. Now, this is something that I have been consistently saying since 2020, that what India faces is not Pakistan, but a one front reinforced war. And reason why I've been saying this is because China, for many years now, publicly had been saying that it will support Pakistan's sovereignty and territorial integrity. When you translate that into military terms, it automatically becomes that the PLA, without showing its hand, it will support the Pakistan military with hardware, software, technology, training, and its impressive non kinetic capabilities, especially its advanced space capabilities. Once we understand that, the next thing to know is, which is very obvious, that in this 4 day war or the 4 day clash, both the sides would have identified their operational gaps, their operational shortcomings, which need to be plugged so that they are ready for war. And the point to make is this, that Pakistan will be able to plug its operational gaps much faster than the Indian side. And reason is obvious, because China will support Pakistan. China will give Pakistan all that is required, the advanced cutting edge platforms, capabilities, technology, because China will make sure that Pakistan does not lose a war against India. Let me give an example. Now, we know very well that the Chinese fifth generation aircraft J-35A, that will be given to the Pakistan Air Force. And this aircraft, the fifth generation, it is coming in serial production in the second half of this year. And there is also news that the Pakistan Air Force officers, they are already in China, perhaps for some sort of a training of this. And I have no doubts that the Chinese gave the Pakistanis their BVR BL-15 that gave a good performance in Sindoor. They may end up getting the more advanced PL-17 BVR also, with a range of 300 to 500 kilometers, which are ideal against AWACS and tankers. Now, see on the other side, the Indian Defense Secretary, who is responsible for procurements, Rakesh Kumar Singh, in one of the programs, television programs, recently he said that India will now buy a package of fighters, refuelers, and AWACS. And he said that the procurement cycle in India is very long, but we hope to sign the contract in a year or 2 years. After that, it is anybody's guess when finally all this stuff will come. So there should be no doubt that the Pakistani military will be able to plug its operational gap much faster than the Indian side, and this has implications. And the implication is that Prime Minister Modi has put Sindoor on pause. It has not ended. Any side can lift the pause. And Modi has also declared a new normal publicly that the world has heard. And the new normal is that any act of terror, obviously from Pakistan, will be treated as an act of war. And no distinction will be made between terrorists and sponsors. Sponsor Pakistan Army or Pakistan military. India will not be deterred by Pakistan's nuclear weapons, and India will be proactive. When you put all this together, it is very plain and simple that what Prime Minister Modi is talking about, not doing counter terror operations using the Air Force like we have done in Balakot in 2019 and then in Sindoor, but he's talking about a full scale war, hot war, conventional war, because no distinction will be made between the terrorist and the sponsors. And the whole world has heard what the Prime Minister has said. Now, the problem here will be that in Sindoor, President Trump says that he brought the ceasefire between the two sides in Operation Sindoor, but the Indian side did not acknowledge that. So rest be sure that if there is a full scale war between India and Pakistan, President Trump, who is extremely unhappy with Prime Minister Modi personally, he will not help in the ceasefire between the two sides. In other words, if there is a war, it will run its full course, its logical end. So this is a very dangerous thing. And why it is dangerous? Now I'll come to the striking feature of the war that we will see. And the striking feature is that the threshold of the conventional war and the nuclear exchange or a nuclear war, it has been brought dangerously low, we have seen in Sindoor. And why I say that is that both the sides they fired missiles and drones, and these firings were done to the operational depths. In depths, the firing was done. So the traditional battlefield between the two sides, where there was a contact line, where there was a front line, and the two armies were face to face, that is all over. We are now talking about missiles and drones being fired on a battlefield where there will be no rear, there will be no front, and the laterals, everything will become meaningless. It will be all over. Now, if it is all over, what that means is that the critical infrastructure of Pakistan will also be hit because Pakistan has a elongated geography and far too many high value targets are close to the border with India. Now, what that means is that even the nuclear infrastructure is very much in the range of Indian missiles. And this is a hint that even the Air Force chief gave, Air Chief Marshal A.P. Singh, in August 2025, when he was giving a lecture, the L.M. Katre lecture in Bangalore, he said that the Indian Air Force in Sindoor it avoided attacking certain critical sites because India did not want unnecessary escalation. He is obviously referring to the infrastructure, nuclear infrastructure of Pakistan. Now, Sindoor was a controlled operation. When a full scale war happens, all this will not be possible. So, even the threshold, the nuclear threshold, has been brought low, very low. And sensing all this, understanding what it means, Pakistan has already taken measures. We know that in November 2025, Pakistan passed the 27th Amendment to its constitution, under which the Army Chief Field Marshal Asim Munir was given an additional appointment. Besides being the Army Chief, he is now the Chief of Defense Forces. In other words, of all the three services, Army, Air Force, Navy, he is the number one. So, as far as conventional war is concerned, Asim Munir will take the decisions for war or no war with India. Not only that, the Pakistan nuclear weapons, which we know are under its Strategic Plans Division. Now, the Strategic Plans Division used to be under the National Command Authority headed by the Prime Minister. Now, National Command Authority has been just kept on one side. Instead, a new organization has been created called the National Strategic Command. And this is where the Strategic Plans Division is, and now it is directly under Field Marshal Asim Munir. Pakistan has a full spectrum deterrence. In other words, it has nuclear weapons, tactical nuclear weapons with low yield. Low yield means for use on the battlefield. It is another matter that the tactical nuclear weapons of Pakistan, they are held at the strategic level. They are held at the highest level. But it has all those capabilities. In other words, if there will be a requirement, the time for Pakistan to get these nuclear weapons ready from storage to mating will be quite fast. So, once again, when we talk about nuclear readiness, the Pakistan side will be ready before the Indian side. In other words, the physical kill chain, whether it is nuclear war or it is the conventional war or the nuclear escalation, the Pakistani side will be ready much, much before the Indian side. Now, I want to talk about something that I have heard in amongst our senior air veterans, air warriors, retired air warriors. They keep debating this about air supremacy and missile supremacy and what does India need in reference to Sindoor. Now, I want to give up my perspective here. Now, when we talk of supremacy, you can put any other word between India and Pakistan. You can say superiority, you can say dominance, you can say competitiveness. That is not the point. So, let me, for discussion, only mention here air supremacy and missile supremacy and why it is necessary that India have both. And the reason for that is air supremacy is about controlling the sky, whereas missile supremacy is about dominating the trajectory of the projectile. In other words, in missile supremacy, it does not matter who has the dominance or who controls the air. So long as the missiles, their trajectory, their projectile, it is able to reach the target. And in this missile supremacy, we are talking about land based missiles, the ballistic missile, the cruise missiles, the hypersonic missiles. In other words, the missile supremacy, what these missiles will do is by going to the target, they will actually be hitting the air defense system of the other side. For example, if the Pakistanis were to do on the Indian side, they would be choosing India's air defense, specifically the S-400 units. They would be looking at command and control centers. They would be looking at Air Force bases. So, all these things which normally the Air Forces do, because it is the Air Force which does the seed operation, suppression of air defense, will now be done by the by the missile supremacy, by the missiles and the drones. In other words, as far as the air supremacy is concerned, controlling the sky, so this will be done by the Air Force, and Air Force now can concentrate on its primary mission, which is air to air. And why this is required is because the two countries have contiguous border, India and Pakistan. So the ground forces, they will need some sort of a air cover, some superiority, limited superiority or supremacy, whatever, for the ground forces to cross over to the other side. What the shape of the ground forces will be, I'll just come to that in a while. But this is the general principle why both are required. So understanding this, what the Pakistanis have done is they have reacted very fast. In this missile supremacy, within days of Operation Sindoor ended, news came that under the Pakistan Army, they have created a rocket force command. And this is where the missiles will be. And what missiles will be there? That also has been explained by one of their distinguished veterans, Lieutenant General Khalid Kidwai. In one of his presentations, he made it clear that this rocket force command will be the middle level between the conventional war and the nuclear war. What he was actually saying is that this is where certainly they will have in the rocket force command the hypersonic cruise missiles, perhaps which will come from China, or the technology will come. So they will have the hypersonic cruise missiles, because he was certainly referring to operations in the near space. Because he said conventional war and the nuclear war. So when we talk of a near space, we are talking about altitudes between 20 kilometers and 100-kilometer altitude, and beyond which 100-kilometer is space. And below 20 kilometer from ground is where you have the air forces, the fighters. So he was referring to this. Now, this is what is a game changer between India and Pakistan. There should be no doubts about it. Hypersonic cruise missiles. They have very distinctive features. Everybody knows that. Speeds will be more than 5 Mach. Then it will be highly maneuverable and it will operate in that near space. So they've already done this. Now I want to come to the missiles as well as the drones. Now, for example, we have also seen that both sides have used swarm of loitering munitions, then cruise missiles, then the drone swarms have come. Now, how to control those swarms? That is the point. And here, once again, please remember that I spoke in one of my videos, or maybe the last video, I spoke about that with the help of the PLA under the Pakistan Air Force, an institution called the CENT AIC. It was established in August 2020. This is the Center for Artificial Intelligence and Computing, and its key job is to bring artificial intelligence, as their Air Force chief himself said, in Pakistan Air Force's operational domains. So, what he was talking about is cognitive artificial intelligence. And this was started in 2020. I'm sure they have come a long way. So when we talk about these swarms or we talk about the drones, what we are talking about is that these drones, when they fly, or the swarms when they fly, they have to be protected against electronic warfare and as well as cyber attacks. This is important, and this is where these capabilities will come in. So, as far as the Pakistanis are concerned, they are moving at a very fast pace. Now, I come to air supremacy. A demonstration of the air supremacy was shown in Operation Sindoor, the first day air battle, where the Pakistan Air Force said that now they were doing multi domain operations. And in the multi domain operation, what they had done was that all the fighters of Chinese origin, which is the JF 17s, as well as the J10 and now the J35 that will come in, all of them will be on their Link 17, which is their indigenous link, as well as they will have the SDRs, which is the SDR is the software defined radios. So they will have both, and all these aircraft will be networked with the software amongst themselves, with the ground station, even with their naval assets, with their evacs in the air. All this will be put together. I won't go in the details as to how they fired the missile, but the point I want to make is this: that for a successful multi-domain operation, what is required is spectrum supremacy. Spectrum means the electromagnetic spectrum, because whoever controls the electromagnetic spectrum through the software flexibility and the SDRs and the Link 17 will be the winner side. Let me explain what this means. What this means in very simple terms is that SDR that I just spoke about, this is the brain that is there with the fighters, it is there with the command post, with the ground station, they all have that. And this is where the cognitive artificial intelligence will come. In other words, with the fighters, it is the SDR supported by the agentic AI of the cognitive artificial intelligence, which will immediately detect that, look, there is a wave or there is something, I need to hop the frequency. So automatically they will hop the frequency, and that indication will be given to the link 17. Now, link 17, the key thing is it should remain unbroken. So, very, in a very overview way, I just want to put across this, that electromagnetic spectrum control of that is important, and so is the control of cyber capabilities important. Once again, artificial intelligence and cyber capabilities. In simple words, what we call is the spectrum kill chain and the cyber or the digital kill chain. So some sort of a capability of a war domain should be there if these successful multi-domain operations are to be done. And we have seen that the Pakistan Air Force has performed that, and this requires lot of years of training. So this is about air supremacy in very brief. Now, a word that I want to certainly say on this is that please remember, when the PLA did its reform in 2015, then they came up with a structure which is called the Strategic Support Force. And in the Strategic Support Force, what they had was their space capability, their cyber capabilities, and their electronic warfare. Now, cyber and electronic warfare are two sides of the same coin, because the cyber attacks the data, that means the networks which connect this multi-domain operation, and the electronic warfare, it attacks the waveform which carry the data. So they work together. So the what the Chinese had done was they first practiced it as one full package, the Strategic Support Force. Perhaps Indian military should consider this. It's important. And we know that as far as the Pakistanis are concerned, right from the Shaheen exercises starting from August 2019, they were exercising with the Strategic Support Force ground elements, which is primarily electronic warfare and the cyber capabilities. Now, I want to touch upon another thing that Rahul Singh spoke about the Pakistani side having good visibility, round the clock visibility, which was only possible because the PLA shared with them their space capabilities. I won't go in the details here at all, but to make a simple point, that please recall that when the Pakistan Air Force, after the first air attacks, they gave the briefing to the international media they said that they had electronic identification of all the fighter jets in the battle space of the Indian Air Force. So the point to make here is that with the space capabilities that they have, all that the Indian Army does, which is, the tactics of maneuver, then concentration of force, all this will not be possible. Which is why the focus will have to be on special forces. And in fact, as far as the Indian Army is concerned, as I said, the contact line will become meaningless when we are talking of a high intensity war. So, all that will be left for them to do with their drones, the tactical drones, are to look after the gray zone operations. And the focus now has to shift. A complete restructuring of the army has to be thought, because all these brigade divisions, the big headquarters, where will they go? Because they'll all be visible to the other side. So special forces is what will be important. There's no doubt about it. And as far as the Pakistanis are concerned, we know that Pakistanis, along with the Chinese, the PLA, they've been doing this warrior exercises since 2013, which is about special forces. And as far as what sort of a ground action can be done, well, they have a lot of options. They have a lot of options in Kashmir, which is our center of gravity. I won't go any further. So the point I have made in this video is that Indian military, and obviously for the reasons known to everybody, I have not spoken about the Indian side, their capabilities. But Indian military should take cognizance of all these striking things which will be there in the next war. Thank you so much.